Hi, if you're interested in Oriental rugs and other textiles and the cultures that made them past and present, RugTube is the place for you. We welcome collectors, dealers, aficionados, and maybe even scholars to talk about what's new, what's old, ideas, theories, and maybe even a bit of speculation here and there. We at RugTube know real art is the kind you can walk on.
I'm talking with Fred Hazen, and he would like to say what first got him interested in rugs.
Well, I started the business in antique rug business in 1889. Started with few antique pieces. Mostly, the beginning was city rugs, and then after a few years, I follow up with my brother. He lives in Germany. He was dealing with a lot of tribal pieces and stuff. So basically, I learned a lot of things from him. And then once I start, buying and selling tribal stuff, I get really in love with, the tribals. I mean, just especially Turkomans and Baluch. Those are my favorite, mostly Turkomans. But I like, starting buying a lot of different things as far as tribal stuff beside the city rugs. Still I love the antique rug business. Still, I'm enjoying it very well, and I have a bunch of them in my house and decorating inside the house and just enjoying it. This is just part of my life, actually.
So most people start off with tribal and then move to city. So you went the other way around.
Yes.
What attracted you to tribal rugs?
It's something, to be honest, it's something about tribal. I mean, it's really difficult to explain, but it's just something about these design with the colors and all those things. How rare some of these pieces are, because city rug you can find hundreds, thousands of them, same color, same design, exactly. But in tribal, from one to another one, you can see the different as far as colors, as far as design, as far as motifs, all those things. So for me, it's like tribal stuff is like I said, it's really difficult to explain. I mean, I'm just in love with tribal stuff, basically.
So Turkmen rugs. A lot of people look at Turkmen rugs and say, "Oh, they look all the same." What do you think?
Not really. No. I mean, I've seen the past 20-something years. I've seen a lot of Turkoman pieces. Like I said, I collect Turkomans. The color maybe is the same, but when you see the piece itself from one to another one, even if it's the same design, you will see some different type of, you will see the different. You cannot find exactly, the same. Even if it's a pair, you will see some different, between one to the other one. So for me, always, I see different things, and and then Turkoman different design from each to the other pieces, basically.
So what about the internet? Do you use the internet to look for rugs or to sell rugs?
Yeah, I do buy, sometimes in the, some internet, some sites, not too often, but I do buy it maybe like 8, 9, 10 pieces a year, basically. But usually I like to some of the pieces in person. But for tribal stuff, like Turkomans or Southwest Persian pieces or Caucasian, a lot of time when we see the piece, the picture, we can tell if it's a good piece or not. So it doesn't have to be always to see it in person. We always, not always, sometimes we buy it from the picture because we can tell if this piece is old enough or good enough. So it's basically it's just make it, I guess, the knowledge, but some people, they don't do that. They want to see the piece in person.
So, what was the most important thing for you to learn about rugs? What was it? Other dealers? Was it books?
Well, for me, actually, when I started this business like almost 29 years ago, 28 years ago, I never study the books. I didn't. Not studying. I looked for the pictures and stuff to see comparing from one piece to another piece, but I never learn anything from the book to go. Basically, when I was buying and stuff, I learned some of the things from some of the people. They've been in the business for a long time, like Michael Craycraft. I learned a lot of things from him. I used to go to his place and I used to see what is he selling because I had so much interest. And I used to ask him a lot of questions about, the tribe, this and this. So mostly, basically, I learn from other dealers to see what they are selling and what they are talking about and all those things. Not much from the books now.
Okay, I think we'll interview you at some later time too. Thank
all
you
right,
very
okay,
much.
No problem, thank you.
I'm with DeWitt Mallary, and he would like to say a few words about what first interested him in Oriental rugs.
Okay, well, I'm from New England, and my family was from New England, and part of furnishing a New England home when my grandparents were putting their home together was to have Oriental rugs. And so their local Armenian dealer in Massachusetts supplied them with bee jars and then incidental scatter rugs, including tribal rugs for table covers and for small floor areas. So I grew up with rugs around the house. And they in turn passed some of these on to my parents, so they were just always around New England houses as I was growing up. One rainy day in a bookstore, I decided to buy a book and find out what these carpets were that I had lived with all my life. And a world was opened to me about carpets, about weaving, about parts of the world that were not part of my education in America. So from that first book purchase almost 40 years ago, I first became a collector of rugs and then a writer about rugs and attempted to do some original research and eventually gave up my other career and started a full-time pursuit of rugs and textiles and related information. Still today, rugs are horrendously not understood and underappreciated in America for a variety of reasons. And I do try both by showing rugs to people and related weavings, other kinds of textiles, what textile art is, and what the difference is between the art of textiles in the cultural context that they come from and commercial floor covering of the 21st century. That whole process has been changed enormously by the internet. because as opposed to the limited number of books that were available when I was starting to learn, and by the fact that you had to travel to see things, because you couldn't sit at your desk and Google what's in such and such museum. I had to travel quite extensively and go around and look at pieces in museums and pieces in collections and exhibitions and handle them. Now, the positive side of the internet is that much more information is available at a few mouse clicks away. Downsides are that it's as easy to spread misinformation as it is to spread information, and a lot of the data on the web is not vetted, and it's easy to, even on dealer sites, I've Googled Caucasian rugs or searched on Caucasian rugs, and the first image that will come up is a Turkoman rug. So there's a lot of misclassified information. But the other major factor of the downside of internet life is that these objects are not just graphic images. They're tactile, three-dimensional objects, and to understand them and to understand the differences between one and another that might look similar in many regards involves actually touching them. So there are pluses to the access to digital images, but to really learn and understand rugs and textiles requires actually handling them.
So have you ever bought a rug over the internet?
I have almost never bought a rug over the internet, and I almost never buy a rug that I haven't seen myself. I will occasionally buy a piece from a known source. If it's from someone who I know and whose knowledge and I have confidence in, then I will occasionally violate my principle and do that. But I strongly advise all of my clients and pupils not to do that.
That's a very good health warning. Thank you very much. We're here with Ben Banayan, the co-founder of Rug Rabbit and the organizer of the ARTS show. He would like to share what first got him interested in rugs.
So I grew up with rugs in the house. My father was from Iran, and we had sort of a variety of rugs. We had some tribal things, we had some old 19th century fancy Persian pieces, and some sort of 1960s and 1970s village pieces that were around. And I guess my first rug memories was playing with Star Wars figures on a 1960s Rom rug that my grandmother had brought from Iran, I think probably about 1979 or so. I studied Islamic art in graduate school, and to make money, I wound up working at different rug stores, sometimes doing writing assignments. Some of the dealers, although they knew quite a bit, they couldn't express themselves in written English. So I would do small projects like that. I started managing stores and things like that. And for rugs as an art form, I liked ceramics, I liked painting, but rugs, there's something, strangely enough, it was cleaner. These things weren't ripped out of books, they weren't popped off of architecture, and they had been exported, largely in the early 20th century. So, I don't know, I guess I've been always somewhat compulsive, little bit of a hoarder, and so I collected what I could afford. And then when I would find other things, I sold those to support my habit, and sometimes to make rent and whatnot. When my wife is from Greece, and we went to live there in about 2003. And a friend of mine who had been in New York before as well was recently relocated to England, to that point Penzance. And we were sort of lamenting the fact that we couldn't find rugs online anymore. We weren't in sort of major centers. We had been in New York City, which was sort of one of the three major hubs of the rug world. And now we were sort of pleasantly in the boondocks. So he sent me sort of a mock-up of a website, and it turned into rugrabbit.com. So we've been doing that since, I think, 2008. And now I do moderation and stuff in different online groups and things like that. And I'm continued to collect Bellucci's. So that's sort of the underlying story there.
Okay, so what do you think about buying rugs online? Are you enthusiastic?
Generally so. It can be a little bit overwhelming because, well, either your eBay used to be a great place to look for rugs, and now it's kind of, if you're looking for really truly collectible stuff, you can still find things, but it's really looking at for a needle in a haystack. Rug Rabbit can be good, but sometimes certain things that used to be seen as quite rare, when you see them online, here's another one, I think there might be a danger of perception that they're common. That's not really the case. I mean, there are two auctions or three auctions. That one just happened now, and the Skinner auction, and there's Sotheby's and Christie's, and then we have two dealers here at the arts show that all have examples of the so-called East Turkestan RKO rugs. These things, I remember when I was starting out, and late 90s, so these were incredibly rare. And now, just go online, you flip through, and you can, there's maybe 10 or 12 of them available. So I guess that's somewhat of a danger, but on the other hand, you do develop a familiarity, maybe superficially so, with the material. I think there's still something important about handling the material, and even when I do buy something online, unless I'm 100% sure and I know who I'm dealing with, can ask them some questions. What's the feel of this piece? What's the tactile quality of it? Then I'm generally confident, and for the most part, I think I'm happy with buying online. Occasionally, though, I will ask to see a piece on approval, and if I'm a little bit skeptical about it, it's usually 50-50. I can say, all right, I should have trusted my instincts there. But I think it opens up some interesting opportunities for people, particularly if you don't know a lot of people who are already rug collectors, or can go into the bazaar in Istanbul and sort of pick through things. So I think in general it's a positive thing.
Do you have any experience with auction houses and their condition reports?
Kind of. Yes. I partnered a rug with a friend of mine. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. Anyway, the piece was presented as is, and a complete piece. There are some holes, and I figured, well, that's the way it is. After we acquired the piece, we found that the entire border was rewoven. It was basically a fragment that had a border stuck onto it. And so I got this piece and I thought, all right, I'm really excited, and how was it that we could possibly get it for such a price? And I called a friend of mine who's a repair guy here, Fosli Solak. I said, Fosli, I just want a little bit of work on this piece. Maybe if you can put in, the foundation and the hole, we just re-weft it and do this. And he's like, oh, this is an interesting piece. What's this? Abby, this is all redone. So that was kind of a shock. And eventually the auction house gave us our money back. They said that they would only stand by the title line. And so our argument was, well, it was put in as a rug, not as a fragment. And it was another auction house 10 years before as a fragment. So I hadn't seen that, and it was brought to my attention. So eventually things worked out, but it was a little problematic. That said, I know a lot of people that are that attend the auctions, look at the pieces, and then will bid, and have had wonderful experiences. So I'm not a huge auction buyer, but I know a lot of people who are, and it generally works out for them, except for the exceptions.
What do you think about the future of rugs online?
I think maybe necessarily, more things are going to go online. It used to be, if you asked someone how they got into rugs, they were either interested in another art form and they would go to antique shows or an antique shop and always run into rugs. That's not as common as it used to be. These things, sort of a strange paradigm, as they become more rare, the exposure or the lack of exposure seems to be diminishing their value. I think a lot of times, when you think about maybe 25 years ago, there used to be rug shops that specialized in antique rugs in all sorts of small towns throughout the US and Europe. That's increasingly rare. So the opportunity for people to get familiarized with the material is decreasing. So online presents some good opportunities, but at the same time, there's a certain experimental factor which was kind of interesting. I remember when I was starting out, I could buy something for $200, and if I outgrew it or decided, no, this isn't really for me, I could go into the New York wholesale buildings and get most of what I paid for it. Sometimes turn a handsome profit, and sometimes I'd lose a little bit. But there's the ability to be experimental, not just in looking at things, but actually acquiring them. And that, I think, presents some challenges in terms of internet buying. The sort of supply chain has also changed. So if a picker who specializes in golf clubs or something like this finds a rug, they're not going to bring it to Brimfield anymore. They might, but more likely they'll put it online and see what it brings. So it's on one hand it's more egalitarian. On the other hand, it sort of breaks down that sort of gravy chain, or gravy train. That's the expression. So.
Okay, thank you very much. We wish you success with all your projects.
Thank you so much.